Okay, this is a video I'm going to do on installing a cock on open kit from 1917 Enfield. Um, this is the new piece, if you can see it very well, and a new spring. So, I've already got a Timney trigger on here, and I do have, somebody modified a 1970 or a stock cocking piece and tried to make it into a cock on open, but it didn't work, so that's one I just had sitting around, so I stuck it in there for now. But anyways, I'll pull this out here and pull this down and kind of show what happens here. Alright, so I'm going to pull this thing apart here, and this has got a pretty weak spring on it, so just pull that back and unscrew it. And then you just turn this 90 degrees and this all comes apart. So there you go, there's your parts and your pieces, and here's the old one that is pretty much junk. I don't know if I'm gonna, like I said, somebody modified this. I don't know if I'm even gonna try and mess with that. We'll put, so here's the old spring, goes out of the way. Here's the new spring. You know, try, and sometimes this one fits pretty good, but sometimes these don't slide on there all that great. So you got to take a buffer or some light sandpaper and sand this firing pin down. Otherwise they'll never fit, but that one fits pretty good, so we'll try and put it back together and see what it does on the bolt here. These usually end up being quite a bit stiffer, so it takes quite a bit more pressure. One thing I should do here, make sure this cocking piece fits on here properly. Sometimes they get full of junk, which this one is. Full of a lot of junk. Because if you sit there and try and you got your spring on there and you're trying to do this, will make your life difficult. So these things are supposed to just slide on in there, but they don't always, as you can see. This is a brand new one. I just got this out of the package. So there we go. Now I'm down in there, and that firing pin will spin freely inside there. So clean that out one more time. Double check it. Yeah, it works great now. So now we can go to putting this all this stuff back together. And make sure, and if you're not sure what spring you had, the new stiffer spring is shorter, and it's also heavier. So if you hold them up next to each other, you can see new one's shorter, new one's heavier. So get rid of that old one. Sell it on eBay. So crank that down. I should make a little tool for doing this. It'll make life easier. Make sure it's lined up. I like to use copper here, or can use aluminum, but aluminum tends to scuff off. So copper will keep from, hopefully, as long as you don't wiggle it around too much, keep from marring your finish. If you just blued it like I did with this one here, so pull that down, pull that out, let it down here, and see what we got. So there, it's installed. Now we'll go stick it in the rifle and see if it works. Most times it doesn't work, but never know. Maybe I'll get lucky. Alright, so here is the rifle. Stick it in, and it works. However, actually works pretty good, which is surprising. They usually don't work that way. You gotta make sure too, when you put these in, you pop this safety on, and this cocking piece should move back just a little tiny bit. When you let it go, it'll slide forward again. But another thing to test is, you got this on, pull the trigger a few times, pop it off, it shouldn't go off. You can slam fire, or not slam fire, but slam the bolt home a few times, make sure it doesn't go. This one actually works really well. I'm surprised. They usually don't. They usually need fitting. So one more thing we got to check. I'll go back down here. Is the firing pin protrusion, and I don't have. Let's see if I got. No, I don't have my dial calipers down here, but I can kind of eyeball it here. So what you want to do when you check firing pin protrusion, turn this cocking piece, drop it down into that cocking groove there, and make sure that you kind of ease it down in there, because you don't want to break anything. So here, look at this. I don't know if you can see it there, but that firing pin is probably I don't know, 20 thousandths under the bolt face. So, and we look back here and we're bottomed out, so that's not good. So everything works good except for we don't have enough depth on our little cocking cam here. So what you have to end up doing is recutting this cam on the bolt, which is kind of a pain to do, because it's not just a straight cut across the bolt, at an angle. It's a helical cut. So as you go up, it starts to turn, or in this case, it'd be flat. Well, at the bottom it's flat, and then it, I don't know, it's a helical cut. So that's kind of tricky. It's kind of hard to set it up in a mill. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but the easiest way to do it is with a little carbide tip in a little die grinder or a Dremel. So you gotta cut this a little deeper, and then your cocking cam groove will end up, the whole thing will move forward. In this case, I don't know, maybe a 16th, maybe 3/32. If you can see there, there's a little gap between the bolt body and the front of the cocking piece there, or the front cam area. Usually if you can bottom that thing out in that groove, you should be okay. And then also what that ends up doing is that this little hump here that holds the cocking piece in place before it's cocked, that'll make that go down further. And you still want that hump there, but you can have it, it can be smaller. The smaller you make that, the easier it will be to let me think. I'll have to get back to you on that, because I can't think right offhand, but the smaller you make that, the easier it is for this bolt to cycle in a certain way. So I'll get to cutting this, see if I can get it cut, and stick it in the gun and see what our protrusion looks like. So I'll get cutting and come back. Alright, so I'll just show cutting here a few minutes. I don't have any gloves down here at the moment, and when you're cutting on these, it's a little carbide bit. This is not, these are about $10 or $14 or whatever they are. They're not cheap. I know you can buy a normal bit for like a couple bucks. These are quite a bit more because they're tungsten carbide. So these cut metal extremely well. However, they put off a million tiny little shards of metal that like to stick into your hands, and then you need to find them and yank them out with the tweezers, or find a magnifying glass and try and find them. So they're a pain in the ass as far as that goes, but they work extremely well. So I'll do a little bit of cutting here and just kind of show, and then we'll cut back and test it out again. Alright, so we've got our million tiny little shards of metal around. And then one thing to do to test this is to take that spring out of there. It's just gets to be in the way when you try and fit this. And I'm also going to clean this out a little more because there's still a bunch of little metal shards inside there, so I'll just get the best I can. The best thing to do is, once you get done with this, is take it and clean it out in like some parts washing solution or something like that. So, alrighty. So here's our firing pin mechanism with firing pin in it, and I can screw it in here. Alright. So I can feel it. Another thing you can do is, if you have other firing pins, you can try those too. I'm just making sure that my cocking piece is actually being stopped by this and not by this bolt shroud. So if you can see it, it goes almost flush there. So I'll try it again. I just wanted to see that for myself. Make sure I'm not doing something wrong. So you probably can't see it because my camera doesn't focus, but there, it's a good 3/16 up yet, and I can see it's hitting back on the cam here. So I'll keep cutting, and once I get it kind of fitted, I'll come back and show you. Alrighty, so I got done cutting it, and here is my new cam surface. I don't know if you can see it there, but I cut it and it seems to work good. One thing to remember, if you're cutting this and you're not quite sure what's going on, put a black magic marker on there and then tighten this thing down and hold it up against there and turn it back and forth. And then you also be able to feel if you got any high spots or low spots, because you don't want any humps in there, because that won't be good. And I'm getting pretty good contact on mine, and mine is pretty smooth. So, and also my firing pin, you probably can't see it, but I got about 60 thousandths protrusion on there. One thing I forgot to mention is that if you have a 14 bolt and you have a model 17 firing pin, the model 14 or the pattern 14 firing pins are usually a little bit smaller than the pattern 17. So you might have to drill that firing pin hole out. And I think I believe the model 17 is 75 thousandths. So if you go a couple over that, you'll be good. 77 or so. Leave a little bit of clearance there, maybe 78. I cut this one to 78 and it's pretty snug in there, so, but it's still enough to come in and out of there freely. So I'll put the spring back in here, put it in the gun, and see how it works. Alrighty, so here we are back at the gun again. I got this all assembled. One thing I like to do is put just a tiny little bit of grease on there. I haven't used mine in a while, so there we go. Just a little tiny bit, that's more than I want. So I got a Q-tip here, I'll just get that out of there. You just want like a fine little layer there, enough to lubricate it. So I'll stick it in and see how it works. So check our safety again, and I could see it moves back a little bit. Pull the trigger, lets the trigger off, it doesn't fire. The moment of truth, fires. No, here's where your cutting ability comes into play, is how well this thing will cock open. And it may take a few times, but there we go. Nice and smooth. Oops, sorry. So this one's nice and smooth. I got this one worked out pretty good. So, and I'll sum this up. It takes a while to cut these. I spent probably about half hour to 45 minutes fitting that. There's a few more things that I like to do to these that I won't really go over because, I don't know, trade secret, I guess. So anyways, if you're thinking about putting a cock on open, which is awesome for these things, that's kind of how you do it. Timony trigger, Dayton tricing trigger, they both work great. There you go.